Hi, this is our presentation on Maui, which is a fire myth about how fire came to the world, and it's a Polynesian mythology. My name is Avery Hoyt.
I'm Cassandra Mays.
I'm Seiji Yamaguchi.
I'm Sophie Rodriguez.
I'm Jackson Metcalf.
So we figured that we start off with just a description of who is Maui. So Maui is a demigod of the Maori and Polynesian culture and mythology. His father was a deity and guardian of the underworld, and then his mother was just that person, that deity's spouse. Um, so he has been a part of many stories throughout mythology, and his main goal was always to bring goods and bring items to people, and he just always wanted to serve the people and serve humanity as a whole. So some of these stories where he's doing that include whenever Maui's lifting up the sky, he's restraining the sun in one story. He hauls islands up out of the oceans, and he ends up defeating this long eel, which is this mythological beast that would terrorize the people. And then the image pictured there is whenever Maui was restraining the sun so that it was closer to Earth so the people could enjoy the sun rays and the light. Um, and so throughout history, he's always been described as just being like a curious but clever trickster. This is going to be really prevalent in the story that we're about to tell about whenever he stole fire for the humans. But although there's multiple stories about how he ended up dying, the main message across the board has always been curiosity killed the cat. So some of these stories of him being killed are that he was struck down by a priest. Another one says that he was buried alive while tunneling under a mountain. But the main story is whenever he was seeking eternal life to bring to the humans and himself. And so to do this, to get this eternal life, he knew that he had to go inside of a goddess and steal her heart and bring it to the people so that they could all have eternal life. And so him and his brothers decided to go to this goddess and steal her heart so they could have eternal life. And he climbs inside her mouth and into her chest and goes to steal her heart. And whenever he gets her heart, he's climbing back out. As he's climbing out, his brother laughs at him and it wakes up the goddess. And whenever it wakes up the goddess, she ends up feeling him in her mouth and chomps down on him and cuts him in half and ends up dying. So that's just a little brief history on who Maui is.
All right, and I will be going into the history of the myth, the overview of it, and give a little insight into the story. So, this story specifically about Maui is how he brought fire as a demigod um to the human world, to Earth. So, this starts off with Maui in a Polynesian village, and he, as curious as he is kind of what Sophia was saying. He was curious about the origin of fire. Where did it come from? He couldn't figure it out. So he decided to extinguish all the fires in his village and in hope that who when fire appeared next, he would be able to trace its source. But when he did this, the villagers became panicked and they were asking questions. How can we cook? How can we stay warm? This is their lifeline. So Maui promises to return the fire to the village and the rest of the earth. So doing so, his mother tasks him with finding Mawika, who is a goddess entirely made of fire. Her pores, each and every one, is supposed to be full of fire, and she lives in a scorching mountain in a cave. And so she sends him there, and he goes to Mawika, and he basically name drops, and he says, "Hey, you're my grandmother." So he is a descendant of Mawika. And as soon as she finds this out, she decides to help him, and she decides to give him one of her fingernails of fire. This is depicted below in the image on the top or the bottom right corner. And Maui takes this fingernail of fire and leaves the cave. But again, he's overcome by this level of curiosity. He wants to know, okay, well, if Mawika has fire, how did she get it? So he decides to basically test a theory and extinguishes the fingernail and goes back to Mawika again and says, "Hey, I dropped the fingernail into the river. Can I please have another one? And this cycle of trickery just continues. And Maui keeps leaving with a fingernail and returning without one. And Mawika keeps handing him more and more fingernails to the point where she starts to give him her toenails. And when she has 2 nails left, Maui returns again, empty handed, asking for another fingernail. And Mawika is a very wrathful uh, goddess, and she does not like this trickery. And she calls him out and becomes very angry and basically throws her second to last fingernail, fire of fury, at him, and the whole cave engulfs with flames. And Maui, being a demigod, he can transform into a hawk. So he does so and starts flying out of the cave. But this fire singes his wings and catches him slightly on fire. And as he's panicking, he calls on another ancestor who is a god of weather. And this ancestor brings torrential rains down on Mawika and on Maui. And knowing Mawika and her strength and her just fear and honor of just this fire, she decides to throw her last fingernail at Maui. But this last fingernail misses and it lands on all the native trees in Polynesia and becomes a part of these native trees. And so with that said, Maui returns to his village nearly empty-handed. He doesn't come back with any fingernails of fire, but what he does come back with is the idea that you can rub 2 sticks together from this native wood that this fire has become a part of, and it will create fire. And this is reflective today through that same motion of friction and creating fire by rubbing 2 sticks together. And finally, Kahu, which is the native bird of the Polynesian culture, reminds the culture of Maui's closeness to death. So this bird actually has red feathers underneath as if it was singed by fire.
So I'm going to be talking about how this is important to the Polynesian culture. As you can see on the image on the bottom right, you can see how all these hundreds if not thousands of islands make up Polynesia. You have Samoa, Tonga, Tahiti, Fiji, Hawaii, the Cook Islands, Easter Island. Maui is deemed important here in regards to the cultural aspect because his story teaches about unity in regards to bringing people together and sticking together and getting through tough times. His story talks about resourcefulness and in regards to fire, how to maintain it, how to use it to cook food, to eat, how to have warmth, how it's a comfort among the his story really talks about unity in this regards. Unity of being together as one and living off of one another and helping one another. And his story is known throughout all of the Polynesian islands.
I'm gonna be going over what is the myth telling behind or like the impact of the culture it comes from. There are four main reasons, and the first one is resourcefulness and ingenuity. Maui's act in the narrative shows his inventiveness and resourcefulness. His use of wit and talent to complete an apparently difficult assignment and emphasizes the importance of his intelligence and problem solving in the Pacific Islander cultures. The second reason is the relationship to nature. Um, the fire represents the strength and vigor of nature, in addition to warmth and light in the many indigenous cultures. One interpretation of Maui's deed of delivering fire to humanity is that it emphasizes the need of appreciating and using the resources of nature, therefore symbolizing the relationship between people and the natural environment. The third reason is cultural transmission and sharing knowledge. The tale emphasizes the need to pass on customs and knowledge from one generation to the next. Maui's gift of fire to the humans might be interpreted as a metaphor for the passing on of cultural customs and knowledge, therefore emphasizing the need of protecting and dispersing cultural legacy. The fourth reason is community and life. Because fire gives warmth, light, and the ability to prepare food, it is necessary for life. Maui's deed serves the whole community by emphasizing the value of collaboration and support among Pacific Islander peoples.
Our last slide is about the lessons that can be learned from this myth. The first of which being curiosity and innovation. Maui's curiosity about the origin of fire led him on to this daring adventure. His willingness to question and explore ultimately brought great benefits to his community. But as I was reading this story, I just couldn't help thinking about like how curiosity killed the cat, and how while curiosity and innovation are great qualities to have, there's also a risk of going too far and it ending up bad, which is why our another lesson is the consequences of deception. Maui's attempt to trick Moika resulted in dire consequences, which nearly cost him his life. The story highlights the importance of honesty and integrity, as well as the potential repercussions. It really isn't told what happened to his grandmother, but there it was talked about how she was depleted at the end by releasing all this fire within her. And he could have there was the potential that he could have been going back to his community without having fire, and his community wouldn't have been able to cook their food or anything like that, anything they used fire for. Um, and so our next lesson is the respect for nature and our elders. Despite Maui's curiosity, he did approach Moika with respect and humility. He acknowledged her power and ancestry. He initially was just curious in his trickery, just kind of won over. This demonstrated the importance of respecting nature and elders, as well as understanding the consequences of the actions. The another lesson was the adaptability and problem solving when faced with challenges such as the wrath of Muiga, the danger of the raging fires. Maui demonstrated his adaptability and resources by calling on his ancestors to rain down water to quench the fires, and he was also able to transition into his bird form so he would have a quicker way of getting out, escaping the flames. This was very creative problem solving on his part, and even at the end of the story, with bringing fire to his village, he adapted from his original plan to just bring whatever fire Muika gave him, and adapted so that his whole community would be able to build fire themselves, which is our last lesson about gratitude and sharing knowledge. Instead of hoarding the knowledge of fire, of how to make fire for himself, he shared it with his community so that they would be able to sustain themselves. And it highlights the importance of sharing knowledge for the collective benefit of a society. And this is the end of our presentation with our references being on this slide. Thank you.